Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business Spotlight podcast, where we shine a light on the incredible entrepreneurs and business leaders in our community. I'm your host, Craig Whipperman, with Music City Action Coach, and today we're excited to introduce you to someone who is blazing a trail in music marketing and promotion right here in all places of Nashville. No other place than Nashville. Our guest today is Larry Pareigis, owner of 9 North Records. We'll dive into Larry's background, explore the challenges he's faced, and the successes he's celebrated. Whether you're a fellow entrepreneur or an aspiring business owner, this conversation is surely to inspire and inform. So without further ado, let's welcome Larry to the podcast. Larry, how you doing today?
I'm great, and I certainly hope I warrant that introduction. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh yeah, you're more than welcome, dude. Yeah, so tell me about 9 North Records.
You bet. Nine North is almost 18 years old, or it will be 18 years old come July. Uh, it, I'll take you backward a little bit to give you an idea of my path, just a thumbnail sketch. I started in radio when I was 15, 14. My voice changed, and I ran down to a local AM radio station in Savannah, Georgia, and actually got hired, which was incredible. The guy had 3 part-timers quit that day, and he needed cannon fodder to put on the air, and I was fresh cannon fodder. So he loaded me in the cannon and shot me, and I had a blast all that summer playing country radio for the good folks in Savannah. The studio was down on historic River Street, which is a great locale if you've never been there before. Savannah has the second biggest St. Patrick's Day parade in the United States, only behind Chicago.
Wow.
So if you ever get a chance to go, green grits, green beer, they dump green dye in the river. I mean, all of it. So
Mm.
anyway, I did that, and then we moved to Tennessee. My family and I was only a kid still, and I my heart was crushed because I thought my radio career had ended. I came in and immediately went to Nashville and got laughed out of a meeting by a guy at a radio station. So I worked at a suburban station in Franklin for a little while, and then I eventually worked in Nashville and worked at the big what at the time was the big rock and roll station here in town for all 4 years of college. So I would work all night playing rock and roll, and I would go back to class in the morning, and I'd take classes in the morning and study some and work on papers, then crash all day, and then wake up at around 10 at night and drive back in to work all night again and wake up in the morning and do classes. And so that was my cycle for 4 years. I got out and went to work for WSM radio here in town and was there for a few years, and then got the call to run radio stations, which was really my ambition. And I got to run a station in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Then I went to run several in Sacramento, California, and then another several in San Francisco, California. It was while I was there that the fella that was the current head of Sony Music Nashville, Alan Butler, to whom I will forever owe this, decided to tap me, even though I'd never done promotion or marketing before. He said, "Hey, I'm reviving a label called Monument. Come work with me and start this thing up." And I did. And the very first artist I got to work with were a little bitty group called the Dixie Chicks at the time, now just known as the Chicks. And they remain the biggest selling female group in the SoundScan era, which is a really proud accomplishment. It's not just mine. There are a lot of people's fingerprints on that, but I was really honored to be there and be a part of it. And before I left Sony, over the 10 years I was there, I ended up the last few years running promotion and marketing for all the labels in the building. So Epic, Columbia, Monument, and Lucky Dog. And yeah, and then when you do a job like that, it's like, and I know that anybody listening to this can relate because everybody's job's tough, but this is like dog years kind of a job. And when you're in it, it's like a game of Survivor, like every day. And I got a lot of immunity challenges. But then one day my immunity challenges ran out in January of 2007, and I took a couple of months off trying to figure out what I would do. And Tracy Lawrence's brother who was his then manager, he doesn't manage Tracy anymore. He's still his brother, reached out to me and said, "Hey, my brother Tracy has a song that's sitting at about, I think it was like 45 or 50 at the time on the chart." And he said, "We just think there's more in it. Would you consider stepping in and helping?" And I thought I was going to take like 6 months to a year off because I'd worked pretty much straight from 14 all the way through to that point. And um, I had seen all the TV shows I needed to see and, you know, done all the things I needed to do to catch up on pop culture or whatever. So I said, yeah, I'd be happy to do it. And the song became a multi-week number one and launched the company right on the back of it. All I had were business cards with my email address and phone number, but that's what got it going. And I've had different folks on my staff through the years. I've got a great staff of 4 other people right now who are just terrific at what they do. Um, and it takes a minute because the way an independent effort works is really different from the way a major label would approach things. I mean, you're usually working with a person who is the financial backer of that artist,
Mhm.
and you have to be very careful with that money as if it were your own, and you have to figure out how to squeeze, nickels into manhole covers, and that's what we've successfully learned to do to the point that we're here, and a whole lot of folks are gone. I mean, in the time that we've been open, 52 different competitors in our niche, I guess you'd call it, have opened and closed in the time that we've been open. So we're so fortunate to still be vertical and doing what we do, because there are a lot of folks in this industry who are flat on their back, and that's a fact. So I'm honored to be around.
Wow. So Nine North Records has been in business, did you say how long?
Since July of 2007.
Oh my gosh, man. So
Yeah,
quite some time, man. Like
yeah,
almost
yeah.
knocking on that's 18 years or so, right?
18 years. Yeah, 18 years July. Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. And through that time, 52 competitors have failed.
Yeah. Well, they've opened and closed. I
Open
don't.
and closed.
Yeah, I don't choose. I don't choose. I kind of make a conscious choice not to tar anybody with a brush that says failure, because
Yeah.
in my own experience, I've either I've either won or I've learned.
Yeah, no question. You're either
You know,
succeeding, you're
yeah,
I would say you're either succeeding or you're learning, right?
yeah, you're right, and that's the way I choose to. That's the way I choose to. I just try to recontextualize it in that way, because if I looked at the different turns that we've taken that didn't necessarily work out, I would drive myself crazy thinking of all those things, and I wouldn't have the time to look ahead and
Hmm.
try to figure out what's up. And I mean, we have had to take several pivots through
Yeah.
through our life to date to remain viable. In this town, and this town is a pretty cruel taskmaster. If you're not doing the job, they'll flush you. And
Hmm.
like I said, we're glad to still be here.
Yeah. Well, that's true competition, right? That's
You
the
better believe it, because
yeah.
you're competing against everything these days. I mean, everybody tries to winnow it down to a fight on a chart or a fight between labels, or I mean,
Hmm.
you're fighting with, computers, you're fighting with Netflix, you're fighting with, you know Amazon Prime. I mean, TikTok, anything
Hmm.
that can distract the consumer
Yeah.
and take them away from you is what you're fighting with. So
Yeah.
you're having a competition with all of it,
Right.
and whatever you do has to be compelling enough to compete, or you're just going to lose.
Yeah. No question. Um, so walk me through one or two of your pivots. Where did you have to pivot?
Well, I think at the start, when I started the company, I had just come out of a major a major label situation that I'd been in for a decade, and for whatever reason, and I promise this is not a self gloss at all, but for some reason I instinctively knew that it would have to be different. When we talked prior, I don't know if we talked about this or not, but one of the reasons the company was kind of sitting in the back of my head as an idea was that I took an artist out to San Diego at the time, and they asked for a latte, and it occurred to me that, I said, I'll bet you that after I buy this, this will date me. But after I buy this full $4 latte, it's going to be $8 when it's charged back to you by the label, just the royalty systems. And because I mean, labels, you're essentially when someone gets an advance, quote unquote, that I mean, that's basically like a loan against their name. They're not
Mhm.
really getting the money free of charge or anything. I mean, they're going to get it charged back to whatever they bring in. So it isn't, I mean, I like to call it loans at usury rates because that's really what it is. And I'm not shooting at majors. It's the way they stay in business, but that's the way the business is conducted and has been for time immemorial. So, I said, that's going to end up costing you $8. I mean, you'd be better off giving me $8. Man, I just want the caffeine. Okay, got it. So I got them a latte, brought it back. About 6 months later, they were sitting in their royalty review with their accountant, and they called me and they said, Pareigis. I said, what? They said, $10. I said, okay, got it. So the $4 latte became 10. And
Mhm.
in my situation, I decided that even though the artist or their, whoever their person was choosing to back them, would be paying the freight, that a dollar would always be a dollar.
Mhm.
And beyond what our team was paid to do the job, they had the ability to say yes or no to any other expense that would ever come up. And I'm proud to say we've never spent a dime uh, on anybody's behalf without their approval first.
Mhm.
And I think that's a big deal. And in our world, a dollar is a dollar. It's just a
Yeah.
flat. That's what it is. No upcharging, no nothing. That's we provide a service. They pay for it, and we get after it. You
Yeah.
know. Now, in terms of pivoting, to answer your question, when I first got out of this, I had the mental adjustment that, okay, this is going to be a new world, and we're going to have to, kind of buckle down here to do our thing. But everyone there was, I mean, that was sort of like, I mean, there are always waves of job losses in every industry. That was a wave of job losses in the music industry at the time, and there were a lot of former major label people on the street. And I thought, oh, these people would be great. The problem was that when I brought them on, or I hired them, they behaved as, in some cases, not all, but they behaved as if they were still at a major label. They behaved as if, oh, I'm gonna, take the company card and whack it for however many bucks when I'm out on the road. It's like, no, 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 no. We have to get all of these budgets cleared in advance by by the artist. It isn't like, working at Sony or Capitol or MCA or, Warner or any of these other places you used to work at before. So it took a lot of adjustment, and then finally, I was able to get a hold of a group of people who've come and go, but they understood what the mission was, and they knew that they were living in a different world than working at a major anymore. So I think that was a pivot that not only I had to make, but they all had to make,
Mhm.
to understand how they could continue to make themselves saleable in this day and age. And honestly, some of them couldn't make the transition, and they went and did other things with their
Mhm.
lives, which is fine. I just love doing this. So
Yeah.
I decided I'd keep doing this. And different people talk to me about doing different things, but I guess a pivot in my brain was, I'm just going to create my own job. And I'm going to try to make my job the best job I can make it, and work with people I want to work with, and not work with people I don't want to work with, and so on. Because especially when you're at a large corporate label, you don't have that kind of choice. They sign artists, and then they assign you the act.
Mhm.
And whether you particularly like that person or not, or get along with them, is irrelevant. That's your job, and you go do it. And it was fine for the time that I did it. But as you get older, you tend to want to work with a-holes a little less.
Hmm.
And, that's kind of where I'm at in my life. I think that's a pivot.
Hmm.
That's one for better mental health. And then a more recent pivot, it was like an awkward kind of rebirth, but one of the things I've evolved into is consulting artists and startup labels
Hmm.
on their careers. And I've gotten into that a lot in the last year. And it's really funny because the last year was a little tough because I'd been known for 30 years as the guy who does the one thing. And then to tell other people you're doing another thing is like taking a Bic lighter to an iceberg, right? It's
Hmm.
like, there's that iceberg of all the things you've done. Oh, but I do this too. Yeah, but we really want you for this. It's like, I really wish you'd do this with me more. And I mean, I have to say that coming out of the first of the year, I started Great Guns with several different people that are not just country. I'm working with a couple of rock acts, kind of an adult album alternative act. I'm working with a guy that I think you could best describe as like a fusion of like classic and yacht rock. But his songs are original, except for the new one he just put out, which is a cover of a John Waite song that is really, really good. And Pretty soon I'll be working with a Latin hip hop act. That'll be a first. So I'm expanding my palette of what and whom I deal with, and that's so fun.
Hmm.
And we still do promotion for artists. That's something that we haven't stopped doing, but I just find this way more inviting and enjoyable.
Hmm.
So I kind of have my staff do a lot of the promotion stuff, and I step in when they need me, which I'm happy to do anytime. But I really like helping people with their careers, and I like helping people start up labels and things like that because I've lived that life, and I like to tell people I know the 10,000 ways that you can step in it. So trust me on them. I'll trust you to invent the 10,001st. So when you step in it, we'll figure a way out of it. But please listen to me about the first 10,000 because the thing about mistakes in this business, and I'm sure it's the same in every business, but certainly in the music industry, is that if an artist comes a cropper with something awful that happens, there's a lot of collateral damage with that because it's never just the artist. It's also all the people that work with the artist. It's their staff. It's the staff of the label that works with the artist. The sales of the artist will suffer either temporarily or permanently. Ticket sales may be affected. Merchandise sales may be affected. People who choose to sponsor the artist or not may stay in or pull out depending on how bad the situation was. So it is a constant uh, struggle to keep folks on the path. You
Hmm.
know.
Yeah, I'm sure. So tell me about you have promotions
Hmm.
versus consulting, right? And
Hmm.
your team pretty much takes care of the promotion side of the business. So you guys have, and as I guess I would understand promotions, you have artists that you're promoting, and
Yes.
you're trying to, and that's what your team is working on. So how many artists do you guys, and I guess are you under, is it under contract with or have an agreement with?
No,
Or,
I've never, I'll tell you, I've never, ever since I've started this, I've never worked with contracts
uh-huh.
because I think that people ought to be free to come and go. I don't ever
Hmm.
want people to think they have to work with me because they have a gun to their head
Yeah,
because
yeah,
some paper that they signed.
right.
So they work with me as long as they want to. And
Hmm.
and we have a lot of repeat business, which is great. But the thing is it's always pretty tight because we never work with any more than 3 or 4 people at one
Hmm.
time. And that's by design. There are some promotion companies that I mean, you probably heard of this term before, dollar holler radio stations, right? Where it was like you paid $1 and got a commercial, and that those were dollar holler guys. I mean, they're a dollar holler promo people too, and you pay them a small amount of money, but you're on a list with you know 12 or 15 other artists. Now, having come out of radio and being on the other end of those phone calls, if you're not in the first three or four or maybe five on the outside people that they mentioned. I don't remember anybody else that they mentioned. So that's why I decided that we had to concentrate on three or four, which will make us a little more expensive than that $1,000 person, but it doesn't make us as expensive as some others. So we're right in the middle, and we make a decent living. And we're never going to die with the most toys, but we know we can deliver, hopefully deliver for the people that we're working with. The business, regardless of our effort, the business, whether it's here or a major label, uh, has a 95+% failure rate. I mean, that's the business, because think of it as okay, so there were Windows computers. We were used to them forever. Or back then it would have been IBMs, right? It was like a keyboard and a great big, CRT monitor, and connected to a great big, desktop, computer device of some kind that held the information. And then comes along the Mac, and it's this little cube that
Hmm.
does a lot of the same things the other thing did, but it doesn't look remotely like it. And when you first see it, your reaction to it is just to cock your head, like, like the Nipper dog in from the RCA logo, the
Yeah.
big the big the big God, I'm trying to think of a, not megaphone, but whatever the
I know
term for
exactly what
that.
you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the term for that, but it was attached to a Victrola, and the
Yeah.
dog is sitting there cocking his head, listening to it. And that's the reaction we always have to something that's new.
Hmm.
I like to call it the shock of the new, and what labels are doing all the time. And movie companies, if it isn't part of a franchise, uh, people who write books, all these people are putting into the world, Macs in Windows World,
Hmm.
and there are only so many of those that are going to get accepted by people and led into the bigger fight. And then those artists' projects help fund a whole lot of other smaller artists to come along and try to do something similar. Because once those bigger artists kind of work through their rookie deal, kind of like the NFL, right? I mean, you have a perfect example is like a Josh Allen at a Buffalo Bills. He's making 45 or 50+ million dollars a year now, and they can only afford so many other pieces on that field now because so much of the money is tied up in the quarterback. Same thing happens with artists after they renegotiate their maiden deal. They basically negotiate themselves out of profitability for the
Hmm.
labels. So the label's always on the hunt for what's new, because
Hmm.
you really I mean, the labels are really making money off of catalog and off of new things. That's really what it is. They're not making it, and everybody loves the heritage acts, and everybody wants to go see them and everything, and they're making a fortune from putting butts in seats and from merch and from sync rights on their music for movies and television, and sponsorship deals for their tours or whatever else. But that isn't available to a lot of the smaller artists,
Hmm.
and the catalog artists have either stopped performing or are dead in some cases, so you're working with their estates. So I mean, it's really it's the younger artists, and the catalog music is where labels are making the majority of their money now.
Hmm. And so are you, as an independent, are you pursuing, what strategy are you pursuing that is not covered by the big labels, or that allows you to, be successful? How do you go to market? How do you find
Yeah,
the talent?
I'll tell you the gigantic hole that's been afforded to us to help fill.
Mhm.
Um, Companies like mine are being looked to assist in the development of artists now, because major labels no longer have the staff or the means to be able to do it. And I
Wow.
mean, I don't want to make it sound depressing, but from a person who used to work at places like this, it is a little depressing. When you go into a major label these days, you're way more inclined to hear people tapping away at keyboards and everything. And it sounds like a bank. I mean, if you hear music coming out of an office in a major label, it's kind of a rare thing because they're all busy crunching big data, and trying to see what the next big thing could be for them. They don't have the ability to take an artist from nothing to something
Mhm.
anymore. They really want to pick artists up who are, if it were up to them, they'd at least be halfway there, and they'd really prefer it like three-quarters of the way there, and then pick it up and run from there because they have the wherewithal to do that. They
Mhm.
just don't have the wherewithal to take somebody from something to nothing. There have been a lot of recent uh, stories like that in the business. Zach Brown was a big example of that. That was an independent effort initially that turned into something that ended up getting him signed. Luke Combs was another big, example of that. I mean, he had a top 30 song in the country before they could even get a deal done
Mhm.
with a major label, and he got signed by Sony, and the rest is history for him, which is great. But it's like that's how much work it took just to get them to come aboard. So nobody's taking anybody from nothing to something anymore.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
it's
so
it's
that's where
very
you're.
it's super expensive,
Mhm.
and it's time prohibitive versus the number of people they've got to do the jobs.
Mhm.
You know,
And so, what's a successful arrangement for you? How do you measure success with your clients? What you,
I mean, look, success for me is if I can take a client and turn them into a very rare bird. People think that stardom is the rare bird in it. Stardom is a very rare bird, to be sure, but I think that the really beautiful rare bird is a musician who makes a living being a musician.
Mhm.
And if I can help take somebody who is, at the start of their career and help them, either consult them through the process or consulting and promotion or consulting, promotion and marketing and social media and all these other things, add them together to get somebody from nothing to something. That's a big deal for me. They can actually make a living doing music. That's great. Yeah, that's a huge win, and they're thrilled with it when it happens. You know, that's one of my favorite things
Mhm.
because it's sort of like, I mean, anybody will tell you that when somebody wants to be a millionaire, right, that the first $100,000 is the hardest. You just slave away at that first 100K, and then things maybe start to like pick up steam. And the
Mhm.
next 100K isn't as hard, and the next couple of 100K isn't as hard, and so on. And eventually you do have your million. But that first 100K is like a knife fight.
Yeah.
And that's what we do all the time. We engage in knife fights on behalf of our clients, and they have to be willing to engage in it too.
Yeah.
It can't be a thing where it's just, if it's just us and the artist and their family and their friends and we doing all the pushing, that's fine. But at a certain point, you need to feel some pull from the
Mhm.
audience. Can't all
Yeah.
be just push. If it's just push, then there's something wrong. The song is not right, or the artist is, there's something off in the way they're being marketed or something. All of those things need to be examined. I mean, a little bit ago, I told you about that guy I'm working with. And this is no fault of his at all. When we started working together, he really wanted to be kind of pushed as like an adult rock artist, which, I mean, he's certainly an adult, and he's certainly a rocker. But as I listened to the music more and more, and I would do, I mean, I don't want to give away all the secret sauce, but I use a couple of AIs to help me with some of the work that I do to help narrow down what a person's audience target ought to be.
Mhm.
And the more work I did with him, the more it came back that, you're really not like an active, people are not looking at you like, you're Metallica. People are looking at you like you're Toto or Journey or something like that, except in 2025. So what we need to do is reach out to the audience that grew up with those people, and also reach out to younger folks who are now finding the music of those artists cool.
Hmm.
And between these, we're going to fuse together an audience for you. And you know, he just had a single that started at, you know, absolute. I mean, we started with him. He's absolutely nowhere, zero, you know. And the latest thing he just put out already has 10,000 plays at Spotify, starting from zero. And again, 10,000 plays is not 1 billion. I get it. Okay, it's not Bohemian Rhapsody yet.
Yeah.
But to go from zero to 10,000 is that equivalent, I'm telling you, of going from, you know, the zero to 100,000 when you want to be a millionaire
Yeah.
thing. I mean, it's like the first 10,000 plays are the hardest. And now we're starting to see things accrue from there because it was like ready, fire, aim.
Yeah.
You know, it's like ready, and then we shot it out there, and they were like, "Oh man, wait, we have to redefine his audience, or we're going to miss that target." So we had to redefine the audience, and ever since we redefined the audience, he's been having success. He's very happy,
That's
and
really
that's
cool.
what I love too. I love clients to be happy. I don't ever shy away from giving them bad news as well as good, just as swiftly. But it's a little different in dealing with people with artistic temperaments because I don't care if you're as tiny as that young woman Sabrina Carpenter, or you're a big old boy like a Trace Adkins. Every one of these folks has like a butterfly inside them that's kind of their artistic temperament, and you do not need to do overkill. You never need to hit a butterfly with a howitzer,
Hmm.
you know. So you just give them the information, and if you want to hit somebody with a howitzer, hit their, you know, their business manager, their lawyer, or somebody like that, because they're built to take it. But you
Yeah.
don't do
Yeah.
that with artists. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And
Yeah.
and they're replaceable. Right.
Yeah, you know, and I mean, ultimately, everything is, because everybody, I mean, every artist has a shelf life, just like any product, you know,
Yeah.
that gets made. And part of the end game for me that I'm on, and I'm not trying to make it sound less glamorous than it is, but it certainly is not as glamorous as a lot of people think. I'm the guy that has to like say, okay, this is some awesome toothpaste. Now, how do I get it out there, and how do I get people to use it? You know, so there is an element where it's like, okay, there's art, but now we have to sell it.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, because it's true. I'm like, I'm working with you because I really like what you do. You know, so don't feel the need to change it, and certainly don't write to any trends, because if you hear a particular trend and you decide to write something in that direction, I guarantee you by the time the music comes out, that trend's gone.
Hmm.
So don't worry about trends. Worry about being as real as you can possibly be in your endeavors. Really let people see under your skin and what you're all about, because that's authenticity is really the key word for success
Hmm.
today. And uh, a really smart consumer, which a lot of people are like, you know, oh, you know, the PT Barnum thing, right? Of you know, the you know, never give a sucker an even break, and all these other all
Hmm.
these other, you know, things that have been passed down through the centuries. I actually choose to look at consumers today as being pretty sharp.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think they're really sharp at is picking real from fake in a hurry. And when they hear fake people in music, I don't think there's anything that turns them off faster. You know,
Yeah.
it has to be heartfelt and has to be meaningful, or, you know, I hate to say this, but it's true. You've got to be a good enough actor or actress to make them think that it's real, you
Hmm.
know, when you're doing it. So, you know, either that, or, you know, you're not going to make it through the gate, because the whole goal is to help people get better at what they can do, so then they can enter what I like to call the terror dome, where they fight it out with everybody else who's
Hmm.
already there. And guess what? They're already there. They're already doing pretty well, or they wouldn't be there, and they don't want you there.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you really have to fight. I mean, there used to be a thing here in town that has really changed. I think artists used to be more helpful to other artists than they are now. I think that at a time there was an idea like, oh, hey man, all boats are benefited by a rising tide or whatever. But you probably know this just from all the things that you've done in your life, as we've talked, that when all of a sudden there is sort of a lifeboat mentality in your particular niche of business or whatever you do, usually the first thing that goes is wanting to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes, I'm going to stay on this boat and I'm going to breathe. And if you have to drown, you drown, but I'm going to stay above water. And as cold as that sounds, I think there's a lot of that in this business right now, that people are very much looking after themselves and their own brands. And if they can look good helping somebody or doing something else, then they'll take that opportunity to look good and help that person. But they also want to see the benefit in it for them.
Right, right. You mentioned authenticity of artists, and it's true. Honestly, it's true in any business that people don't do business with you because of what you do or how you do it. They do it with you because of why you do it, right?
Yeah.
Why are you
And
doing it?
why and how? Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
if you explain, what your passions are, what is your deepest, beliefs, and it kind of fits into the business that you're doing, that just draws people to you. And that's the same thing you're saying here with the artist and their
Yeah.
performance. They have to
I
be
mean,
authentic about what they're putting out there.
you bet. I mean, one of the things I like to get an early read on with a potential artist is what I like. I mean, I know there are other names for it, I'm sure, but I think of it as an agony or ecstasy scale, right? Which
Mhm.
is, if the worst possible thing happened, what would the worst possible thing be? And then if the best possible thing happened, what would the best possible thing be? Which then gives me a really good understanding of how to manage their expectations.
Mhm.
Also, I try to get a lot of people I work with to do a document early on that kind of says, this is who I am and this is what I believe in. Because if they do have any kind of success, there are people that are going to want to take that and bend it and reframe it for them. And they have to have a really good sense of who they are and what they do. And they need that document to refer back to it a couple of years later. Like,
Mhm.
this is what I thought then. Do I really want to bend that in
Mhm.
this case?
Yeah.
And a lot of people have been saved from bad uh, lapses in judgment by looking at those documents.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's no different than working with a business owner and getting
Yeah,
them to identify, what their beliefs are. Belief statement, right? This is what I believe. This is what my purpose is, and that, some people think that's fluff, but dude, it's really, it's kind of important to get that down on paper because that's like, I don't know, that's what drives you. That's what keeps you going, with
that's
the
where the rubber meets the road.
yeah, right.
And I think there's nothing more important than to find out what people believe in, because it'll tell you pretty quickly if
Mhm.
that's a person that you're in alignment with or not.
Right.
And if that's somebody that you can help or do business with. That's the other thing. I mean, I turn down 90% of the business that we get pitched because it just doesn't, a lot of cases it doesn't fit, or we're too busy, whatever else. I mean, I'm never mean about it, but I just say, look, we're busy, but let me recommend to you X, Y, or Z, and
Mhm.
consider, maybe working with them. And because again, there's no need to take a howitzer to a butterfly, and that person could always turn up later with something that's really good. So, you want to leave the door open. You don't want to just burn the bridge to burn it.
Mhm.
You want to leave that potential open, because everybody, see, you talk about first principles, and I always find that to be very interesting, because when I think back to even when I was a little kid, I don't think my first principles have ever changed. It's just the way I describe it may have may have changed a little. uh, but I have always been a firm believer that the right 3 minutes can change the world.
Mhm.
because I've seen the way people react to music, especially live. It's like you can see it lighten people, or you can see it make people think, or you can see it make them cry, or you can see it make them remind them of their, first girlfriend, or their wedding, their courtship, the different things that they've encountered along the way. And these songs are like little signposts for them as
Mhm.
they go along. And I mean, I thought the Chicks did a magnificent job growing their audience up with them, and then those moms brought their daughters along with them for that ride, and now they have younger fans too. There's never been anybody better at it than Taylor Swift, who has the entire female world just
Exactly.
wrapped around her finger.
It is amazing. It
I
is
mean, they
amazing.
want to know who she's dating. They want to know, what Dior things she's wearing to the Chiefs game this
Yeah.
weekend. I mean, they want to know. They want to know when is the next Taylor's version of an album from Big Machine she's going to re-record.
Mhm.
I mean, they just want to know everything, and it's amazing to me because I experienced this up close and personally. And my niece, who's just a magnificent, I'm surrounded by magnificent nieces and nephews. I gotta tell you, it's such a privilege watching these young people grow up around me. And I got a call from my one niece. It would have been last year, uh, uh, and she called and she said, "Dearest Uncle Larry, uh, I was wondering if you had a moment for me." And I'm immediately, I have my hand on my wallet because I'm like, this is going to cost something. I'm like, "Sure, niece, whatever can I do for you?" She said, "Well, you may or may not know, but it looks like Taylor Swift is coming to Nissan Stadium. And you also may or may not know, but I'm a really big fan of hers." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm aware of all this." And she said, "I just wanted to let you know that it's not a big deal, but if I don't get to see her, I will burst into flames." And I said, "Okay, I understand the mission. Let me see what I can do." And I ended up being able to get, her and her sister and her mom, my sister-in-law, in to see one of those Nissan Stadium shows, which she did 3 nights here in town, and
Yeah.
they just had a ball.
Yeah.
They sent me video from there of them singing along with the whole crowd. I mean, you could barely hear Taylor for the
Yeah.
crowd. It's like the
Yeah.
crowd was singing so loud they were singing the song.
Yeah.
They she also did a yeah, I forget what the term is on iPhone when someone calls you and does a video thing. But anyway, she called me up and did live video on my iPhone and said, "Uncle Larry, I just got Taylor's latest album. I was wondering if you would watch me unbox it and go through the process." Sure. So I sat there with her, and I have to tell you, it was amazing. But she got the blue vinyl version of the album Midnights, and when she opened it up, all of these little cut up hearts and flowers and bells and everything in the same exact shade of blue as the vinyl in the album came falling out of the box in front of her.
Mhm.
I mean, it cost all of 2 cents
Mhm.
for her to do it, but what an impression!
Yeah.
To,
Yeah.
they open it up, and it isn't just an album. There's a little note in there from her and a big flood of confetti,
Yeah.
things that
I
are the
mean, it's
same.
turning.
Oh, I mean, it's just, I mean, the marketing genius behind it is, it just boggles the mind. And by
Yeah.
the way, if you ever do end up doing any kind of consult for her or work with her or something, you're going to have to sign an NDA because that's something that they do too. I'll tell you another story off the record about who almost got that last tour. And I'll
Mhm.
tell you, everybody should be, especially her. I think she is kissing the ground in joy that she chose who she chose instead of who she could have chosen, because
Mhm.
that would have been a real mess. Because the person she almost chose is sitting in jail right now.
Oh my Lord. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So she made the right choice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. The experience of opening a gift like that. You know,
Mm.
the real marketers have figured out that you know, what kind of connection, that emotional connection that, you know, provides the consumer to
Yeah, I mean, some people, I mean, New Orleans, they call it a lagniappe. I mean, to me, my term for it is the magic 1%.
mhm,
Like, okay, you're giving 100%, the other person's giving 100%, fine. I know logically there's nothing more than 100%. But if you were to do 101%, what is that magic little 1% that's going to differentiate you from everyone else?
yeah,
And she has that down cold.
mhm,
And that magic 1% thing is something I've always tried to do too.
yeah, yeah. So Larry, tell me about your business is in a great spot. You're turning down 90% of the stuff that's coming your way. You get to pick and choose
Yeah.
who you want to do work with. You've got the promotion side of the business
Hmm.
kind of clicking, and you're getting into this kind of consulting gig. Are you what do you see the future for the business? Are you going to add is it you? Is the business you and your talents? Are
It's it's me and four other folks.
Yeah.
And those four folks are concentrating on promotion and in one case social media for the people that we work with.
Mhm.
Um, and I am still involved in that to a degree, but I'm really more involved in this now because I really enjoy it. It's so much fun. For whatever reason, everything with me is in 15 and 30-year increments. And I quit radio, at the age of 30 and went into the music business. And here I am at a 30-year increment. I'm now 60.
Mhm.
So it's like I've hit that 30-year increment, and it was time to have a rebirth and start doing something different. And that's kind of what happened. And I'm glad that it's happened this way. It's really exciting to
Yeah.
work with. It's always been fun to have multiple bosses
Mhm.
instead of just one boss, and because I love multiple bosses, I really do. Because the thing about multiple bosses is you can always get more,
Mhm.
and to replace the other bosses. I mean, the thing about one boss is you're just completely in thrall to that individual, whether you particularly agree with them or not. You have to do it because it's their house and it's their rules, and I respect
Mhm.
that. And I did that for a lot of years, but now I like to just do it my way.
Yeah. So for this year, maybe the next 5 years, do you have like specific goals as far as number of clients helped or
Not, I
getting?
mean, not so much specific. I think right now, what I'm zeroing in on is how many people I can work with in this fashion and do right by each of them.
Mhm.
And I need to settle on that number in the next year. So there'll be a lot of experimentation with, you know, calendars and time and meetings and phone calls and emails and Zooms and Google Meets and Microsoft Teams and and everything else that everybody is using to get in touch with each other and to figure out not just what the best method of communication is, but how to really um, help people where they need help and to meet them where they are
Mhm.
instead of sitting on the high horse and saying you have to come to me. It's like i'm
Yeah.
not i'm not Muhammad and I'm not the mountain. I don't I'm happy to meet people where they're at because that's the only way I can answer the questions they've got
Mhm.
is to meet
Can
them where
you do you see yourself recruiting others to work under your direction, doing servicing?
maybe. I mean, yeah, I mean, anything is possible because it gets to a point where it becomes unwieldy. Then yeah, I mean, because yeah, I think that there are a lot of talented people out there, and I find it interesting. They seem more willing to listen to the prescriptives I offer in this situation rather than in promotion. Promotion is more of a cut and dried thing. You went up this week, you
Mm.
went down this week, more stations came on, more stations didn't. I mean, all of that stuff. But um, this is different because you're offering people advice on how to move clearly forward.
Mhm.
And and it's exciting to help because everything's done by strategy. You're not gonna climb Everest, just with a backpack and a hoodie and a and a thermos. I'm gonna climb Everest. Okay, see ya. And they find you, 100 feet away, frozen to death. You have to find your whatever your hill is and map backward from there
Right.
and build your way up to the mountain. And what I always like to do with clients too is just do quick little look backs, not so much that you celebrate to the point that you're breaking your arm, patting yourself on the back, right? But you're like, okay, so you were here and now you're here. So I understand you're experiencing frustration, but look at where you were
Mhm.
and look at where you are now and realize it's a completely different level
Yeah.
of frustration. And
Yeah.
we're getting into the area of high quality problems. These are like
Hmm.
really, these are like first world problems. These are not starving artist problems
Right.
anymore. And
Right.
and that's cool,
Yeah.
you know.
You know what? So I mean, you're as much, it's mindset, it's, you're coaching, you're providing direction,
You
and,
bet.
are I don't see you actually doing work for them necessarily. It's not like you're taking on the work. You're more of in the role of a coach, would you say?
Yeah, but I also do. I mean, I also, when you want to talk about getting your hands dirty, I guess there are different
Yeah.
definitions of it, but it's like earlier this week, I mean, I spent 14 straight hours uh, on my computer setting up a pair of advertising campaigns, one at TikTok and one at Meta. And then I was also setting up a social media campaign for a third artist that I'm consulting. And
Oh,
I
wow.
generated 30 days worth of posts for them, kind of based on their website and things that they've done in their career and everything else and things that they intend to do. And I went through and I edited those with them to make sure that I was getting their brand voice right because I wanted to make
Mhm.
sure there's nothing more important than that to me. And
Yeah.
I mean, here's an example, and I'm not calling out anybody in particular, and I feel sorry for the intern or whoever that made this clearly rookie mistake. But the other day, I was on Keith Urban's X account, and I saw a thing that said, and I'll ask you, I'll just tell you what it said, and then I'll ask you what you think is wrong with it, and I think you'll get it pretty much right away. It said, you'll register here to win one of Keith's Sunburst Gibson guitars. Winner to be announced, whatever. Okay, that's cool. What's wrong with that?
Wow. You say it's obvious, and here I am.
That's okay. That's
You know,
okay. Because sometimes I'll tell you exactly what it is. If that's Keith Urban's X site, right?
yeah.
So what it should have said was register to win my guitar.
Oh my gosh. Oh, duh. Of course. Good
My
Lord.
guitar is all the difference.
Oh my gosh.
Because if it's win Keith's guitar, it's obvious somebody wrote it for him.
Yes.
But if it's
Yes.
win my guitar, he could have written it.
Yeah.
And those are the rookie errors that you have to watch out for in communication, especially around artists, because it doesn't take a lot to screw up a vibe of authenticity
Hmm.
for them. And if you put together enough of those social media posts in a row, it begins to like kind of hammer away at that in
Hmm.
the public's mind. It's like, it is very, very hard to blast your way into a mental folder that sits in somebody's head.
Hmm.
And once you're there, it takes a lot of work to stay there.
Yeah.
Like I like to tell artists I've always worked with, nobody can take anything away from you but you.
Hmm.
If you decide to stop doing the work, someone will come take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as long as you continue working and keep yourself doing what you ought to be doing and changing with the times, you're going to be fine for a long time.
Mhm.
I mean, there are a lot of ways to stay viable
Right.
today.
Right. Right. Well, Larry, it's been great having you on the show, man, and learning
I
more
to-
about.
I, I totally enjoyed it. I thank you for having me on. I thank you for the time. I
Yeah.
appreciate you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. And I really appreciate the insight into music promotion. And
Yes, sir. Anytime you want to talk about it, here I am.
okay, man. All right, dude. Have a good day.
You too. You take care.
All right.